let's get back to the big news of the day with his insights on the results of the 45th election. We are joined by former Conservative Cabinet Minister Peter MacKay. Good to see you, Peter, as always.
Good to see you too, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
First up, look, I got to ask you about the riding where you are, Central Nova. For much of the night, that was really the riding to watch. I mean, this was something else. It went back and forth, very tight.
It really was, which is sort of indicative of some of the races in Atlantic Canada that were close and expected to be close. There was almost like two elections, though. There was the advanced polls, which came in late in a lot of Atlantic Canadian ridings that seemed to tip very much in favor of the Liberal Party or the incumbent. And, I would hearken back to Trump's insertion, both at the front, the beginning, and the end of the campaign, that really drove fear. And while high voter turnout in an advanced poll usually indicates change, in this case, it seemed to indicate a sense of fortification against Trump, which favored Mr. Carney.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, about these advanced polls. And Atlantic Canada really led the way in many respects with the amount of percentage that it went up. And those did seem to come in late in the evening. You think that was the case in Central Nova as well, eh?
Yeah, that was certainly the case in Central Nova. I was with Bryce Jenkins and his team, and Bryson, worked extremely hard, even before the writ dropped. And it looked as if he might just pull it off. And then those advanced polls came in, mostly from the town of Glasgow, and it just took it out of reach. But look, these are bruising affairs. It's a huge commitment, as we were speaking of earlier, for candidates of all political stripes. They put their lives on hold. They sometimes are away from their occupations and their families, certainly during the campaign. And when it's all over, it's it's a relief for some, a disappointment for others, but it's an enormous commitment to democracy and to public service. And so, looking at this objectively, we had high voter turnout across the country. We had record participation in the advanced polls. And now we have a new government, and Mr. Carney, is to be congratulated. He did something that nobody has ever done before, and in many cases, certainly Conservatives didn't expect him to do at all.
Well, it was an extraordinary turnaround, perhaps nowhere more so than in Atlantic Canada. Look, there were calls for a united front last night by all the party leaders. Given the threat of Trump, do you expect this minority government will last a couple years? Year anyway?
Yeah, that's normally the case. A year, 18 months. It will depend on the dynamic of the leaders. There is obviously a big decision to be taken by the Conservative Party. Jagmeet Singh announced last night he's leaving, so there'll be an NDP leadership contest. The Bloc, or conceivably the NDP, will hold the balance of power if it's a minority government. And there are still some seat counts to come in that could potentially push the Liberals into a majority. But it's still going to be somewhat fragile. It was a very fractious election. There is a lot of national unity discussion happening now, particularly in Western Canada. And so I think there is many chapters yet to be written, and a lot of sorting through the ashes of last night, in my opinion.
Well, why would it be perhaps in the interest of Mr. Poilievre to work with another minority Liberal government? He increased the popular vote way up, increased the seat count.
He did. By most measures, this was a successful election. The interesting, you mentioned the overall vote percentage. In 2011, Stephen Harper, our government, won a majority with a similar percentage of the vote, the national vote. In fact, the Conservatives now, for the last 3 campaigns, have done extremely well by that measure. But it's the economy of that vote. Obviously, much higher percentages of victory in seats in Western Canada and narrow losses in other parts of the country. But as far as cooperating with this government, normally it's issue by issue, bill by bill. If the major issue is Trump and tariffs and what's in the best interest of Canada's economy, then by all means, I expect that Mr. Poilievre will want to do that, and Canadians will expect him to do that.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask how long he can serve as a leader from outside Parliament. When would he eventually have to seek a by-election?
Well, that's a great question, and there's some historic context that you may know. In fact, there's recent history. We had, Premier Fury and Premier Danielle Smith both elected without seats in the various legislatures, and it's happened at the federal level as well with John Turner and Mr. Mulroney, who ran here in Central Nova.
Of course.
So that will be a personal and party decision that Mr. Poilievre will have to work through without a doubt. But, I think what everybody is hoping for, I certainly feel it, is some stability now. A chance to get back to focusing on Canadian productivity and growth and issues around housing, our national security, and yes, of course, fending off any further intrusions by the Americans or anyone else. We know that Chinese interference was an issue in the last two elections, and I suspect that they would have tried again. So a lot of geopolitics at play. This was a consequential election, is the word you keep hearing. And it's true, as every election is. But this one, certainly a bitter election for the Conservative Party, the fourth electoral loss for them. And I think there'll be a lot of internal examination, hopefully not sort of recriminations and infighting, because that really benefits no one. And it's just not the time to do that, given all of the other important issues that Canadians are wrestling with.
And perhaps that's another conversation we can encourage you to come back for.
Always happy to chat.
All right. Okay. Peter MacKay from Pictou County tonight. Good to see you. Thanks for your insight. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after this.